So today we're going to talk about developing a marketing plan, talk about some of the aspects of a marketing plan, what makes a successful marketing plan, and what elements we want to make sure we have included. In the end, marketing and advertising and promotion are words that get utilized interchangeably. They all have very different definitions if you look them up online or in the dictionary. But I think what we want to talk about today is kind of that concept of how do I spread the word about my business or my product effectively? What does that mean? What kinds of things should I be considering when I'm putting together my ideas for how I'm going to spread that word? Because with advertising or with marketing, you can spend an infinite amount of money. There are always opportunities to spend money in marketing. So with that, I think we'll just go through the different parts of marketing plan. I want to be able to take away, I want you guys to be able to take away from this is understand why it's important that we plan for our marketing. I talked about one aspect of it, of course, the cost. I mean, knowing where your money's going is a key element in making sure your business is successful. I want you to be able to understand what the key components of a marketing plan are and develop a strategy from those. And then what I think is most often forgot when it comes to marketing or market planning is being able to record your results and track them as you move forward in your business lifespan. So what makes up a good marketing plan, or what kinds of things should we do in order to write a good marketing plan? One of the things that I think is a little underutilized when we talk about marketing is that we have to look at what's happened in the past. We have to know what decisions, and even if we haven't had a marketing plan and we've been just kind of going by the seat of our pants or as things come at us, making those decisions on the fly, figuring out what the results of those were. Because just because we didn't have a formalized plan in place and we were just kind of making those on-the-spot decisions doesn't mean that they were all bad or ineffective, but we just need to make sure the ones that were effective we implement as a part of our marketing plan, and those that weren't, we kind of push to the side or put back up on the shelf because maybe the timing wasn't right. One of the things that especially in small businesses, I think a lot of people struggle with is defining a target market, because they say, well, gosh, we want to sell it to anybody that'll buy it, right? We need all the customers we can get, especially, like I said, in smaller communities or in small businesses. And that's true. We're not definitely going to turn anybody away, but I think we need to do a better job a lot of times when I have people that come in and that are struggling with this a little bit. We have to do a better job of defining kind of our core customer or our specific target market, and then branching out from there. Because if we can reach those guys effectively, that will make it easier to continue to provide our services even to the masses. Setting goals, and we'll talk specifically about what makes up good goal setting and what makes it effective. And make sure that some of those goals or all of those goals are attainable at some level. Setting the bar high is a good thing, but we also want to make sure that we can reach that target from time to time. Otherwise, if it's constantly just out of reach, that sometimes leads to frustration, or sometimes it leads to burnout. We want to include deadlines. One of the things, we set goals and we say, we're going to get there eventually. And if we don't set some deadlines for ourselves, and again, we're putting these plans and these parameters on this plan on ourselves. So we do have ultimate flexibility with them, but outlining some deadlines on those targets gives us something, again, that kind of pushes us towards attaining that goal, or at least reevaluating that goal if we feel like it is becoming that kind of unreachable target. This one is very important. Providing a budget, setting some dollars aside specifically for marketing your business or product is important. I know one of the numbers that we have the toughest time kind of grasping a hold of when people are coming to see me after they're already in operation and we're just trying to get a better handle on their finances is putting a parameter around their marketing efforts. A lot of them say, well, gosh, there's deals that come up with if they advertise on the radio from time to time, and sometimes I'm at the end of what I thought I was going to spend for the year in marketing, but then again, I have a new product launch, or somebody sold me on a new line that come into my store, and I need to get that word out there. So how do I do that within budgets? But if we don't set a number, again, it's kind of like that goal setting. If we don't set something out there to attain, or something out there to measure by, then we just are constantly in this flux, and actually we end up, especially when it comes to budgets, wasting a lot more money and not having the effect that we actually want to have. If there's more than one person that has responsibility with regard to your marketing plan or your marketing efforts, setting up accountability and who's responsible, responsibility measures, who's responsible for what within that plan is important, because we run into it not only on the marketing side of things, but just in daily life. Oh, I thought you were doing it. Oh, I thought you were doing it. And then neither person's actually working on it, and it doesn't get done. And it's not really anybody at fault. It was just kind of a lack of communication. So kind of lining up that communication on the front end so that we know who's responsible for it and who's ultimately accountable for whether it gets done or not is also important when it comes to your marketing plan. And again, like I said, we're putting these, whether they're goals or whether it's a budget or the deadlines, all of these things we're imposing on ourselves or inside our business. So understanding that it is a fluid document, that things are going to come up from time to time, that we're going to have to make some adjustments, that the decisions that we make each year when it comes to our marketing efforts may change each year. Maybe our target market changes. Maybe what we thought we defined as our target market in year one, when we got into actual operation, we found that there was maybe a different market that made more sense to us that we didn't see first when we got in there. So just kind of giving yourself that flexibility to be able to go in and make those adjustments on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis. You know, the timing of them really is going to be independent or dependent on just your business model in and of itself. So some people will do it quarterly, some people will do it once a year. Some people, unfortunately, don't do it for 3 or 5 years. We want to, try and increase that a little bit, but being able to make those adjustments is very, very important. So before we get into the process itself, I'm going to go through a bunch of information, and we're going to go through it relatively quickly. So as you have questions that come up, don't wait until the end. Just kind of shout them out or get my attention, and we'll go through them kind of on the fly, make this a little bit more informal. Like I said, when I started putting this stuff together, I knew there was a bunch of information I wanted to get through, and I also knew I was limited on time. So some of it I will kind of skim over more high level, and some of the more important pieces I'll dive into a little bit more. But as we go through any of it, if I kind of skim over something, you're like, ooh, but I am really wondering about a piece of that, just let me know and we can go through it in a little bit more detail. With regard to the process itself and coming up with a marketing plan, whether you want to formalize it or not, of course my suggestion or my recommendation is that we get this down in writing so that we can remember it better throughout the year as we go through it operationally, or not. Some people just said, I want to make these decisions. I want to have something kind of in my mind as I'm making these decisions. This process still holds true. For me, I like to get things down in writing, not that even that you're going to give it to anybody, like your business plan, or you may be turning it into the bank when you're going in for financing or something like that. Your marketing plan is something that's probably just yours and that you guys are just enacting internally in your business. It's still good to have. It's still good because, as day-to-day business happens, life is busy, everything's kind of crazy coming at you moment by moment. It gives you kind of a concrete foundation to go, okay, Q2, I know I had identified some goals where I wanted to market and who I thought my target customer was. Have I reached them? Are there some adjustments that I need to make and whatnot? And it kind of gives you that base to build on. So starting from a situational analysis to kind of figure out where you are in the market, what market you see as your product or service fitting into, and kind of do some research with regard to that market. Figure out your ideal customer. What do they look like? How old are they? Are they male or female? Are there ethnic or racial demographics that matter in their buying habits and whatnot. I mean, some of those things that we can't ask in interviews doesn't mean that we can't use it in research to figure out our ideal customer who's walking in and out our door every day. When I work with people on the business planning side of things, and they're writing this to actually take to their bank for financing, I would say, if you can close your eyes and picture, unlocking your door in the morning and who the customers are that you see first walking in and out of your business door, usually that's who you can start to identify as your ideal customer. And what do they look like? And from that, we're going to use that to figure out how they get their information, what their trends are with demographics. Could be for buying, could be economics, could be education, any of a number of different factors. But it's going to make us a lot more effective in trying to reach that particular person. And again, that's the foundation. That ideal customer or that target market is the foundation that we're going to be able to build the rest of our sales on. So outside of that target market, we still want to attract those people to our business or to our product or service, but this is where we need to start. We need to start with who our ideal target market is. If you're already in business, using some of your historical data with regard to existing sales and things like that, taking those notes down so that you can judge the effectiveness of your marketing based on where you were before you started doing it or before you started making changes to your marketing plan, and where you are after implementing some of those changes, of course, gives you the measurables to go back and say, yeah, this seems to have an impact or an effect, this doesn't, so maybe we can move these resources that we're expending, whether it's time, money, whatever it may be, on this marketing effort that doesn't seem to be working over into some of the ones that does. We need to be able to make those decisions based on a number of factors. One of them is, where were we before we started doing it, and where were we after we made those adjustments? Positioning yourself in the market is basically trying to figure out how you want your customers to see you. A good illustration of this, I think, is in the restaurant industry, right? So we have some restaurant concepts that want to position themselves as low cost, quick and convenient. McDonald's, fast food, those kinds of things. We have some that are mid-tier. That's where they want to fit in the market. Those could be things like Applebee's, Ruby Tuesdays, those kind of restaurant concepts. And then we have those that want to identify themselves as high-end, those kind of fine dining experiences, and they have a specific target market that they're trying to approach. So we get to identify in our business where we see ourselves fitting into the marketplace and what we want our customers to think about us. It says product. It could be product or service. Just describe what it is, who uses it, how they use it, who needs it. And if it's not your particular product, if it's a new product, new concept, what are they using right now instead of it? So that we can have an idea of trying to figure out how to convince people that that's not what you should use. You should use our product or service, and here are the reasons. Well, if we don't take a look at those things that I was mentioning, who uses it, how they use it, who needs it, and what's currently used, if it's not our product, it's a harder time for us to hit that target as to describing to somebody why they should choose us over the infinite number of other options that people have out there. And then defining our value proposition. It's these two words, value proposition, have become very cliche recently. A lot of people are using them. I have to describe my value proposition. What does that mean? Well, it just means like what value, and it doesn't have to be monetary, but what value do people see from using my product or service? Is it low cost? Is it convenience? Is it high effectiveness? Is it efficiency? Is it any of a number of different things? But defining really what values my product or my service are bringing to my customers. Competition. There's a couple of different reasons why we need to be able to identify our competition very, very well. with regard to the effectiveness of our marketing, we want to know what our competitors are doing with regard to marketing, where we're seeing them fit themselves into the marketplace, so we can, one, identify if there's any gaps or niches that they're not filling that we might be able to fill. And that's a much easier sell if there's a void in the marketplace that's not being fulfilled, that can be fulfilled by your product or service. It's easier to get customers in that space than it is we go in and we know our competitors are doing almost exactly what we're doing, and they've identified or placed their value on the same things that we're placing it on, and we have to really work hard to come up with why somebody should walk in our door and not their door. So that's a much more difficult space to convince customers, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible, as long as we do a good job in some of these other things. And then also, when we start looking at things like pricing and some of the other strategies, knowing what our competition is doing and knowing exactly who our competition is going to be very important. Again, I used a restaurant example earlier. When it comes to competition, and I talk a little bit about this in the business planning side of things as well, what we see as competitors when I have somebody that's looking at starting a restaurant come into my office and I say, okay, well, what's the concept? What are you looking to do? Well, we're going to start a Mexican restaurant. Great. That's awesome. Well, do you know who your competition is? Well, there are no other Mexican restaurants in town, so I don't have any competition. Well, that's not exactly true, right? I mean, you have other options. You can go to the local burger place, you could go to the Chinese restaurant, you could go to the pizza place. All of those are competition. So they go, okay, I get it. So they just go and list all the other restaurants in town. They bring it back to me, and my first question is, well, what about Quick Trip? Well, Quick Trip's a gas station. That's not a restaurant. That's not competition. Well, if you've ever been at Quick Trip around noon, there's a lot of cars going on, a lot of people carrying a lot of food out of there for not being a restaurant. So we call those ones that are listed on that restaurant list as direct competitors, and folks like Quick Trip or the grocery store, any of those kind of harder to see competitors as indirect competition. They still have an impact on your business. And I think mission statement sometimes gets lost in that people look at it as this visionary kind of fluffy statement a lot of times that, what kind of impact would your mission statement have on your direct marketing process? But again, it kind of gets back to that value statement and understanding what our mission is as a business owner, what we're trying to fulfill for our customers. We're in business for ourselves, and I think a lot of times people have a little bit of a problem thinking, well, gosh, that they want to make all this money off us if they're in business. Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of why people go into business, is to make money. I mean, they're good people that go into business, but there's going to be a return on that investment on money, investment of time, investment of effort. There has to be a return. So the mission statement comes in with your values in your business and how you want to fulfill your customers' needs and wants. How you want to do that, like there are some businesses like Hobby Lobby that have, corporate missions that implement religious beliefs and a number of other things into just, I want to produce a 9% return for my investors, or some of those kinds of things. It's your business, so you get to define that mission statement the way you see fit. Again, understanding that without customers, your business isn't going to survive very long. So you have to fit your mission statement into what your customers are still going to value in your product or service. And when it comes to marketing strategies or advertising strategies, and here's where it kind of there's some interchangeability. I see some people call them marketing strategies. I see some people call them advertising strategies. I've seen some people call them communication strategies. Basically, how do we get our message out to our potential customers? One, we want to create our messaging, taglines, product descriptions, call to action, let people know what we have to offer, and we get those words out there. One of the problems that a lot of people have is they have a million different ways to say it. They use different color schemes in all their ads that they run, or they use different taglines with each sale that they run, or whatever it may be, and they lose the value of that consistency. I think it's something like 6 to 8 times somebody has to hear a message before they actually commit it to memory. So if you're running a business and you keep changing your tagline every ad that you run, people have to relearn, oh, that's Sarah's Hair Care or whatever. I thought it was this tagline, now it's this tagline, so I basically have to relearn that. Whereas if we stay consistent, even in things that I think people think have very little impact on a person's buying decisions, like the color of your graphics from one ad to the next. Again, it's all about getting them to remember you on a more consistent basis, being top of mind for them when they want to make their buying decisions for whatever industry or line of business that your particular company is in. So staying consistent with as many of those things as you can in your messaging, in your taglines, in your colors that you use in your color schemes, in your advertising, in your product descriptions, and in what you ask people to do. How do they reach you? Could be your phone number, could be your website, could be an email address, could be follow us on Facebook, whatever it may be. However you want people to get your information, try and stay as consistent as you possibly can. Losing that consistency is just like changing your phone number. Every time you change your phone number, you have to get it out to all your contacts, and they have to relearn how to get a hold of you. That's kind of what changing your marketing message does. Trying to figure out the best way to reach your target market is very important as well. And like I said, once we define kind of a target customer, core customer, ideal customer, they're going to have traits and attributes on how they get their information. So do most people hear about businesses like mine through networking events, through reading the newspaper or hearing an ad on the radio, seeing something on Facebook or Google searches, or how do they find out about their products that they're looking to make decisions on what they're going to buy or not? For each demographic, it's a little bit different. You know, when we're in a room full of people and we say, okay, well, how many people still read the newspaper to get their information? Well, 5 to 10 years ago, the majority of the hands would go up. Now, 3 to 5 years, fewer hands went up. Now, within the last 3 years, I would say even fewer hands go up as to, do I read the newspaper to get my information? Not just the news are they getting, though, right? News is, in the newspapers is also all those ad sections and insert sections and whatnot. The effectiveness of those is still very targeted towards a very specific segment of the community. And if their target markets would change and those businesses that are advertising in the newspaper, they have to figure out a different way to get a hold of their core customers. And so when they do the demographic measurements of who's buying their product, and they find out it's now all of a sudden it's not baby boomers anymore, now it's millennials, how those two segments of the population get their information is way different. And if we just keep doing the same old thing that we've always been doing when it comes to marketing or advertising, we're going to lose out on a lot of sales and probably lose our core customer that we can build on because we're not reaching them effectively. Again, when we talked about competition, one of the ways that we want to create brand awareness is promoting attributes of our product or service that set us apart from our competitors. Again, why choose us over competitor A, competitor B, or competitor C? What are the things that make us stand out? Are we trying to compete on being lower cost than our competitors? Are we trying to be more convenient than our competitors? Are we trying to be more effective than our competitors? What are those things so that we can create the brand awareness for our product or service that will get people in our doors and not our competitor's door? And then with some companies, utilizing outside salespeople or even internal phone salespeople is a decision that they have to make. A lot of times for smaller businesses, it's one person wearing 9 different hats. I got to take off my salesperson hat and put on my management hat, or take off my salesperson hat and put on my operator hat, whatever it may be. But if we are using outside sales folks, there's a number of other things that we need to maintain to be effective, and some of those kind of fall back up into here. If we have a fleet of or if we have a sales force going out into the market to spread word about our product, and they're using an inconsistent message or inconsistent advertising, it's not going to have the impact that we want it to. So if we were looking at a sales force, there's a number of other factors that we could bring into that as well. Pricing. Some folks don't think pricing is a part of your overall marketing plan, but it really is. Again, researching as best you can your competitor pricing so that you can make sure, again, depends on how you want to compete with that person. Do you want to compete with them on price? Do you want to compete with them on value? Do you want to compete with them on effectiveness or convenience? But if we have no idea what they're charging, we have no idea to gauge if we're being effective in that strategy or not. So doing some research on what your competitor's pricing strategy is will help you in making your decisions when it comes to your pricing strategy. And then also, determining how much it costs for us to provide our product or service, right? So I think I use the restaurant example a lot, but it's easy to illustrate a lot of these points there. When we're looking at selling or pricing our cheeseburgers, and we've gone out, we figured out what all the competitors, everybody else in town that sells cheeseburgers, whether they're other restaurants or the Quick Trips or the gas stations or the grocery stores, whoever sells cheeseburgers in town, we've gone and done all the research and we know who is pricing their cheeseburgers where. That's great, but it's only the first step, because based on where we want our value to our customers to be for our cheeseburger, we need to understand what our cost is to provide the cheeseburger that we want to provide. Our competitors are doing that for themselves. So McDonald's has their cheeseburger for $1, and we want to sell ours for $6. How do we know that we're being effective? Now you'd say, well, gosh, there's no way McDonald's can make just as much money on their $1 cheeseburger as we can make on our $6 cheeseburger. But if we don't know what the cost of the inputs are for our cheeseburger, if we're going to use Kobe beef and microgreen lettuce and organic tomatoes and all these different things, all of a sudden our cheeseburger cost to provide goes up to $5.95, and McDonald's is still getting their mass-produced beef and frozen product and things like that, and their cost to produce theirs is 5 cents. They're making 95 cents profit on theirs each time they sell it, and we're making 5 cents profit on ours. Well, there's probably an adjustment in pricing that we need to do, but without figuring out what it costs us and breaking down all of those little costs. And that's where I see a lot of people make some mistakes, is they go, well, I make the cheeseburger, the burger costs me, I'm going to charge $5 for it, the burger costs me $1, the bun costs me 50 cents, and the cheese costs me 10 cents, so I'm at $1.60. Like, oh, well, that's great. I mean, you're not going to put onions and pickles on it? Well, yeah, but those don't cost very much. Well, don't cost very much, all of a sudden adds up. Those nickels and dimes and things add up, especially when you're looking at volumes, larger volumes of product, that they will make an impact. All of a sudden it becomes more than onions and pickles. It's tomatoes and lettuce and those kinds of things. And all of a sudden you're adding what you think is maybe pennies to your product is adding percentages to your product. Like all of a sudden now it's a 5% higher cost that you're not accounting for at all. So doing a good job of figuring out exactly what it costs for us to be able to provide it is very important.
Chris, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I look at this and I think, unemployment rates where they are now, like one of the things that we talk about a lot is how do companies market themselves to potential employees, and how does that play into this marketing plan? Because a company can't operate if they don't have staff.
Correct.
So somebody like Elsa who works in HR, how does she go about creating an ad that, or creating a marketing plan that's geared not necessarily at getting customers
Sure.
to purchase their furniture, but at getting people to want to work at their organization?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great question, and I don't know if I'll answer it exactly the way that you're thinking it well, but okay. I think I have an answer that makes sense. And we looked at the pieces of this planning process, and we looked at these different factors of target market, positioning, and identifying how you want your customers to think about you. I think it's pretty easy if you just replace customer with employee to understand, oh, I get it. For a prospective employee, I want to be able to describe to them where I want to fit in with regard to the market, with regard to their life, with regard to their values, and those kinds of things. So I do think that people look at this as a way to always reach customers, and that perspective I think is maybe something that's overlooked a lot of times, and how do we get employees to come in. But I think a lot of these same pieces will hold true in that process as well. Again, mission statement, figuring out your competition, because especially in low unemployment rates, people have a lot of options on where they want to work. So if I'm looking at, again, identifying, instead of my target customer, I'm identifying a target employee with what demographic attributes those folks might have, and saying, how do I reach them to get them in my door to make, fill out my application or whatnot? Well, I'm going to be competing against a number of other companies, a number of other jobs, a number of other opportunities, and if I don't identify them or do a good job of figuring out exactly who they are, it's kind of like competing against the ghost, right? You just never know exactly what somebody is measuring me against. So,
are there things specifically that you're seeing as effective in that area, like specific strategies that are like really working for companies?
Well, I think right now strategies is a little bit subjective, just based on, again, who we see, what type of employee. It could even be, are we looking at entry-level employees? Are we looking at executive-level employees? Are we looking at engineers? Are we looking at operators? Each one of them, probably the strategy to reach them is going to be a little bit different. But one of the things that I think is a common thread that would run through it, even though how each of those groups that I just mentioned would probably look at it a little bit differently, the common thread would be they're all looking, or the majority of people that I have heard are looking for quality of life kinds of things. So they want their job to be more than just a job. So they feel like they want to stay there longer, right? And I think as employers, for the most part, they're looking at, we want to hire folks that are going to be with us long term. How we would all define long term, I think how people define long term today is different than it was 10 years ago. But we don't want to constantly be retraining or training new staff and those kinds of things because it costs money. So figuring out how to be more than just a paycheck to employees is one of the things I see a lot of people working on. And whether that's workplace adjustments like instead of desk chairs, we have bean bags, and people can bring their dogs to the office and those kinds of things.
Googleize it.
Yeah, absolutely. They have beer taps in the break room, those kinds of things that are like, we see them and we go, wow, that's cool. I'd love to work in that place. That's part of it. But it also could be work-life balance or flexible schedules or any of those kinds of things that I think we hear a lot of people talking about now too. And again, as an employer, we know, based on some of these other things that we talked about, I'd love to provide a flexible schedule, but the time that my work needs to be done is 8 to 4. Look at us. City halls are open 8 to 4. Well, I'd love to be able to say to my staff, yeah, you work better from 5 to midnight or whatever. That's great, but it's not gonna be effective for what we do. So, I think trying to come up with a combination of workplace, lifestyle kinds of things, work-life balance kinds of things. I mean, I think that's where I think the conversation is going beyond, because it used to start with, what's my paycheck going to say in 2 weeks? That's what we're going to talk about first. Now that seems to be like third or fourth or fifth in the conversation. They still need to get paid because bills don't go away for anybody, but they're starting the conversations with, well, what's the office setting like, and can I be there to meet my son when he gets off the school bus and those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's great. I think not to monopolize the conversation, but how can communities help these businesses with that?
How can communities help businesses?
Like when you're talking about people are looking at where they want to live and then where they want to work.
Oh, absolutely.
How can communities play a role in partnering with organizations to help them with that?
Well, I think communities play a big role in that quality of life conversation. So, I think maintaining a close line of communication between a community and its employers so that they can utilize the quality of life things that the community is providing, walkability, could even be a great restaurant selection, could be, there's pet care, dog kenneling, babysitting services, those kinds of things that employers can use to say, okay, prospective employee A, Um, through our conversation, I understand these things are things that you value in life. Work-life balance, you have kids, you have pets, you have an active lifestyle, whatever it may be. And here's how the community that we're situated in helps us provide you with these attributes that touch on those kinds of things. So, great child care, great pet care, walkability. It depends on what they're looking for. But you as a city, or Stewartville as an example, as a city, can provide some of those things for its employers.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at marketing, I think these 5 questions are a great place to start. And I call them 5 questions, and I kind of cheat a little bit because I add 2 questions sometimes in each one, but don't call me out on that too bad. But if we ask ourselves these 5 questions, or some variation of these 5 points, if we can define them for our business or service, it gives us a great start towards coming up with an effective marketing plan. And we've talked about some of them. What's unique about our business idea? And it could be location, it could be the talents that I as the owner bring. I talk about us being good upper Midwest folks a lot, and bragging about ourselves is not something we're comfortable about. But when it comes to these kinds of things, being able to identify what our strengths are so that we can market to them or play to them is very important. So, again, identifying a need for our potential customers that we are, as a business, are going to try and meet. Whether that's safety and security, whether it's convenience, whether it's cost effectiveness, whatever it may be for your particular business. But if we can do a good job of figuring out what's unique about us or the business or the product that we provide, then we can do a more effective job of sending that message to potential customers. Who is our target buyer, our target customer, our core customer? Who buys our product and service now, if we're already in existence, or as we're putting together our concept plan, who do we envision will be the ones that are making the decisions to buy our product or service? And is that ideally who we plan to sell to? Again, we get to have an impact on whether it's our mission statement or our value statements, those kinds of things. Or is there somebody else that eventually we think we see ourselves selling to? We have an introductory market that we're hitting now, but we see the potential outside of that is much bigger. We need to be able to identify that as well. This one, like I said, I talk about it a lot. I talk about it a lot in the business planning one too, figuring out who our competition really, really is. Again, we can do a great job of telling people what's unique about us, but if we don't know who our competitors are, to be honest with you, we don't know what makes us unique. If we don't know what everybody else is doing, we don't know if what we're doing is special or not special. What's the positioning message that we want to communicate to our target buyers? Again, how do we want to let people know what the value of our product or service truly is? Again, convenient, it can be any of a million different things, and it's going to be different for each probably customer market that you have, and being able to understand exactly which part of your product or service, which part of the value of your product or service touches which market is going to be important when we come to our actual marketing plan as well. And then, like we were just talking about, how do we, once we figure out what this message is going to be, what our product is, what makes us unique, why they should come to our store instead of going to one of our competitors' stores, once we figure out what that message is, how do we communicate it? What's the most effective way to get it to the people that we see as our target customer or our core customer that we're going to build on? These 8 elements kind of sum up what I think we need to have included in our marketing strategy. Market research and analysis. What gaps are out there that we might be able to fill. Pricing. Where do we fit? Where do we see our pricing? And that includes our cost to do business, our cost to provide our product or service. How does that fit in the market? Figuring out who we're selling to, like we've talked about a couple of times, figuring out who we're selling against, what our goals and objectives are with regard to marketing. And I think this is especially important when it comes to advertising. Again, you can spend an infinite amount of money advertising, but figuring out what exactly it is that you want to accomplish with that advertising. Is it building your customer base by 10%? Is it opening up a new customer, a new market that you haven't touched before? What is that goal and objective? Then we can measure its effectiveness better, and then figure out if that's the way we should keep spending our money, if we should make some adjustments, if we have to change how we're spending our money, spend more money, spend less money. Without knowing what our goals are, it's impossible to be able to measure that and make those adjustments. And then marketing methods, again, how do we get that message out there once we figure out what it is? Setting a budget so that we can compare year over last on the amount of money that we are investing in our marketing plan and our advertising, and figure out, again, based on our goals, is what we're spending effective? Do we need to increase it? Can we decrease it? And are we finding some efficiencies and things like that? And then how are we going to measure our success? Is it just based on getting new customers in the door, or is it based on increasing our profit margin? Is it based on being able to add another product or service because we've been able to increase our markets? What are we going to use to measure our success?
Can you give an example of how you might measure the efficacy of an advertisement that you're putting out there?
Yeah, I think one way that I could illustrate it is, let's say we were planning it's a little bit more abstract. Let's say we were planning a Google Ads campaign. And in that Google Ads campaign, we put our artwork together, and it's not a coupon that people are going to bring back to your business, but we still want to measure its effectiveness. Are we more visible in our marketplace than we were before we did it? Well, how do we measure that? Well, I think it would be important for us, or imperative for us, to figure out, before we ran that campaign, where we were. So what were our sales numbers, what were our customer numbers, those kinds of things, so that we have a foundationary base. Then we run the campaign, and then we take those same measurements after we run the campaign. So we can determine, okay, well, it looks like our sales went up. Our sales only went up 2%, but we got 50% more people through our store. Is it effective? Well, yep. I think, degree of effectiveness, we would still need more analysis done, but if we set the goal of, I have this product and service that I think a lot more people could benefit from, I just need to get them in my store so they can see it, so that I can explain that to them in a more effective way. Getting that number of foot traffic or customers in through your door is effective. Even though initially it only led to a 1% increase in sales, and you were maybe hoping for 5 or 10% increase in sales, something along those lines. So figuring out where you are before you start your ad campaign. If it's, I'm going to put a coupon in the local paper, of course, after you're done running it, you can count the coupons and figure those kinds of things out. But I think radio advertising, television advertising, internet advertising, some of those that are a little more abstract, I think for people are a little bit harder to understand how to quantify. Does that illustrate it? One of the things we talked about when we looked at putting together an effective marketing plan is doing some market research and analysis. And when I talk to people about that, when we're going through their business planning process, they get super nervous. Like, you need some sort of specific degree in order to do market research. And actually, it's not rocket science at all. It's basically just trying to take a good picture of the market that you're trying either to break into, or the market that you're in, and then identifying certain qualities and certain characteristics that market has. Again, it could be things like demographics, it could be things like income levels, it could be things like size and scope of market that you're trying to reach. There's a number of different things that we can identify, and every little piece of this that we can do and get for our business will make us, or give us a better ability to market ourselves, to get our message out there effectively and efficiently. So quantitative and qualitative research, I actually put this in there for you because you talk about quantitative versus qualitative research all the time. Basically, quantitative research is statistical and uses like computations, right? Like figuring out the numbers and figuring out percentages and those kinds of things. And qualitative research is looking at lifestyle issues, more issue-based and less number-based attributes from your marketplace. So those could be, some of those societal factors and those kinds of things. Each one of them has an importance, and based on your particular business or service or product, one may be more valuable to one type of business or service than the other, but that's going to be individually determined as you kind of go through this. Basically, what market research includes is trying to figure out and test potential target markets for your product. Testing a target market, because like, well, how do you test a target market? Well, it could be things like focus groups, survey data, those kinds of things. Figuring out your ideal customer product or profile. Again, like I said, I know for our businesses we want to sell to as many people as possible, but we have to start somewhere. So figuring out who that core customer profile is and getting a good picture in our minds as to what that group of people looks like. And once we do that, then we can figure out, okay, what types of things have an impact on that particular buyer? Are they, is there major influence pricing? Do we have to be the lowest cost option in order for them to look at us? For some markets, yes you do. For others, not as important. For others, it's more about other values, and pricing is a factor, but not necessarily the first factor. Gauging the economy, just figuring out the world that we're living in, right? So gauging the economy. In 2008 and 2009, the picture of the economy and buyers' confidence was very bad. Right now, it's starting to come back. A lot of markets, it's really good. Some are still struggling a little bit, but just doing some research kind of on the macro level, on the 10,000 foot level, as to what's happening in society right now. Because again, new companies that started, there were new companies that started in 2008 and 2009 that are still around today, that went through a really tough time with the recession and everything else, but they figured out that they could make a go of it even in those tough times, and then once those particular market segments turned around, they would be positioned in order to benefit from that pretty rapid growth after that. So having an eye to what's going on a larger scale is important. Conducting competitive analysis, that sounds fancy, but basically is what we were talking about before. It's figuring out who we're selling against and what sets us apart from them. Testing perceptions towards brands, images, packaging, companies. Again, that's could be done through focus groups. It could be done through surveys. That has a bigger impact on things like retail sales or products that are sold to retail sales. How they your packaging and your image compares to the thing that's going to be next to you on the shelf. Is very important. So if we have a product or service that those types of things, it's important to all of them. It doesn't matter if it's retail or not. It could be a service. Image is always important. Packaging looks different. Packaging for a retail product could be the box or container that it comes in. Packaging for a service could be, do you wear a suit and tie when you do your job? It could be your personal packaging. Measuring customer satisfaction. We've all, I think, probably filled out a customer survey card at the end of an experience, whether it's a buying experience, could be a restaurant experience, could be a vacation experience. It could be something that's sent after you've had a customer service experience. You know, you call in, maybe your product wasn't going or wasn't working the way that you needed it to. You called customer service, you went through things with them, and at the end of that customer service visit, they sent you a survey. Figuring out if your customers are finding the same value that you thought you were providing to them is important. So constantly trying to do things to measure that, I think, is equally as important. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what a SWOT analysis is, but by gathering some of this data, we'll put together some key criteria for a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis is basically just figuring out what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And on the community side of things, we do this a lot. We do it to determine, like, of a community or a region, you know, what the strengths of the community are, what the weaknesses of the community are, what opportunities there may be, and what the threats to that growth or things are for the community. But for each product or each service or each business out there, these things are measurable and also equally important. So identifying, again, like we've talked about, what are the positive attributes of our product? What are the things that set us apart? What are the things that are within our control within that conversation? Some of the things won't be, but there are a lot of things that will. What do we do well, and what advantages does our product provide over our competition? Weaknesses. These, you know, especially when we're just getting started, it's tougher for us to see weaknesses, but I think it's important to be able to go through and just figure out where the gaps may be for us, or the weaknesses may be in our product service. It could be things like we're limited in our geographic reach. It could be we're limited in our distribution. It could be our product, we're going to sell a lot of it online, but yet it's expensive to ship. You know, there's a number of things that could lead into weaknesses, but we need to do a good job of identifying them so that we can figure out ways to compensate for them. Opportunities, and again, this could be opportunities in market. This could be opportunities for effectiveness. This could be opportunities in new markets out there to be able to reach. Could be opportunities with regard to new distribution circles.